Welcome back to The Score. 5 na ang pasok sa second round ng NBA playoffs at 3 na lang ang natitirang slots sa conference semifinals. Makausap natin ngayon ang basketball analyst and blogger na si Sir Enzo Flojo for the latest on the NBA postseason. Sir Enzo, glad to have you with us on the line.
Good evening, Anton. Glad to be here. Great day kanina for amazing NBA action.
That's right. And two teams barged into the next round of the NBA playoffs. We're talking about the Toronto Raptors and the San Antonio Spurs. Enzo, your biggest takeaway from, let's start with the Toronto and Milwaukee series.
Well, it was a great series. No, you had Milwaukee, one of the up-and-coming teams in the NBA. They proved that they could hang with a team as good as Toronto, and Milwaukee certainly is going to be one team to watch next season. I'm sure a lot of people will expect them to be even better in the 2017 to 2018 season. In Toronto Raptors naman, you got to give them props. After falling behind in the series, 2-1, they were able to turn things around. I like the adjustment that Dwayne Casey made. They went small in their last couple of games, and it paid dividends. And now they're back in the second round facing the team that eliminated them last year, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
You're right. Jonas Valanciunas was brought to the bench, and he was usually the starting center for Toronto. So tama ka, Enzo, they went small. But what about Kyle Lowry? A lot of expectations, and I heard that he was very cold in this series. Do you think he'll be able to bounce back when they face Cleveland in the second round?
Well, Kyle Lowry didn't put up big numbers in this series. That's true, no? In fact, there were a few games where visibly he really struggled against the Milwaukee team, which was fast and young and long. And against the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think Kyle Lowry will be, will have better production. He'll be in his element a bit more against someone like Kyrie Irving. I think Kyle Lowry will produce bigger numbers against Cleveland, and he has to. Kasi if you look at Toronto and Cleveland, in terms of offensive production and firepower, lamang na lamang talaga yung Cleveland. But don't sleep on the Raptors, Anton. You know, they added PJ Tucker. They have Serge Ibaka right there. Defensively, Toronto has some great tools, and they have what it takes, I think, to stretch Cleveland or that series to maybe 6 games, maybe even 7,
Wow.
if they play really, really well.
Wow, that's surprising to me that you think they actually have a strong shot this time around against Cleveland. Kasi nga nung nakaraang taon, they were able to play against Cleveland and take them to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. So do you think the Raptors this time around have more tools to complete and possibly beat the defending champions?
Well, believe it or not, I think they actually match up a little better against Cleveland compared to Milwaukee. Talagang medyo nakita natin against the Bucks. Even in this game, no, na lumamang in Toronto by as many as 25 points, we saw in one critical stretch in the fourth quarter na the Raptors struggle against long teams. And Cleveland isn't the longest team. In fact, I think both Toronto and Cleveland will probably go a small ball in that series. Eventually, I think Cleveland's going to win. But Toronto, like they proved last year, they have some tools to frustrate the Cavaliers. They added some more defensive weapons this season, in particular si PJ Tucker, and of course si Serge Ibaka also. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the defense of the Raptors will try to contain or hamper the offense of the Cavaliers. At the end of the day, I expect Cleveland to still win it, but I won't be surprised if Toronto can match last year, stretching it to 6 games, or maybe even pushing it all the way to 7.
I'm very excited for that series, especially with the addition of Serge Ibaka, who is now in the East. He came from the West. And speaking of the West, pag-usapan natin ang serye sa pagitan ng San Antonio at ng Memphis. Tony Parker, during the post-game interview, said that he's happy na hindi na nila makakalaban ng Memphis. He had a clutch performance earlier today.
Oh, definitely. Tony Parker came alive, not just in this game, but in the whole series. I think in all but one game, he scored 15 points or more. And that's a very good reflection of just how clutch Tony Parker is. Remember that Tony Parker is turning 35 in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So in many ways, he's supposed to be over the hump already. But in this game, he shot 11 out of 14 from the field, finished with 27 points. I think he made his first 6 or 7 field goals that really set the tone for the San Antonio Spurs. But understandably, nahirapan din siya kasi yung kalaban niya on the other end is one of the most underrated, players on the planet, si Mike Conley, who also did well here with 26 points, 5 assists. And it'll be interesting to see how the San Antonio Spurs and Tony Parker in particular, how they perform in the next round. Kalaban nila, of course, will be the Houston Rockets, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be a battle of Texas. It's going to be a very interesting, entertaining matchup. You have the Rockets, who are run and gun, and you have the Spurs, who are very mercurial and very deliberate in their execution.
Do you think San Antonio will have an easier time against the Rockets? Kasi medyo nahirapan sila sa Grizzlies because of the ruggedness and the size of the likes of Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol. Houston doesn't really have those types of guys. They have a different style of play. Tingin mo ba mas madadalian o mas mahihirapan ang San Antonio sa Houston?
I actually think that the Spurs will have a more difficult time against the Rockets. The Rockets are red hot right now. They're brimming with confidence after disposing of the OKC Thunder, and they have the right coach and the right tools to match that coach's system. And you have one of the best players who can play in that system, si James Harden. So San Antonio will have to make a lot of big adjustments going into the Houston series. And I'm picking San Antonio pa rin to win that. But definitely, I'll be surprised if it's a short series. I think that series is going to go all the way to 7 games. And, even if San Antonio will have a more difficult time, I still think at the end of the day, they should be able to beat the Rockets and go to the Western Finals.
When you were here on the score, the last time we talked, we were talking about the MVP race. We had 4 guys. We narrowed it down to 4 guys: LeBron, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Kawhi Leonard. Wala na yung isa. Wala na si Russell Westbrook. James Harden was able to eliminate OKC with the help of his shooters and that team built around him. Now he faces up against Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs. Do you think it's like a personal battle also for James Harden na patunayan sa buong mundo na siya talaga ang karapat-dapat na MVP?
Well, it's possible, Anton, definitely. People have been talking about the MVP race for the entire season. People say na because of his production, Russell Westbrook deserves it, hands down. But for me, the MVP race, also one big element of it is a storyline. And because Russell Westbrook is no longer playing, a lot of the focus will shift to this particular series between Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. And I tell you, if James Harden manages to lead the Rockets into an upset of San Antonio in this series, if Houston beats San Antonio 4 times out of 7 in this series, I'm picking Harden to be the MVP. I'm going to lock it in. If Houston manages to beat San Antonio in this particular series, I think Harden will be the MVP. I'm not particularly sure of when the announcement is going to be made, pero if it's going to be made after the second round, and if Houston is still alive after the San Antonio series, I don't see why you can give it to anybody other than James Harden. The production he has, how far he's taken this team, and the style of play, I think all those will just mesh well into a good storyline and a good package for a James Harden MVP awarding ceremony somewhere down the line. But having said that, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to beat San Antonio. So much depth, experience, and nakita naman natin, kahit yung matatanda nila, like Tony Parker, minsan may Danny Green pa dyan, may Patty Mills, may Pau Gasol. These guys can still contribute even in the big games.
Yeah, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, that's going to be a very interesting matchup considering sila nga maghaharap sa second round. But for the Beard, what do you think is his biggest case to be awarded as the MVP by the time the announcement is made?
Well, I think the production he's had all season speaks for itself. It's very, very close, actually, to what Russ produced, which was a triple-double, of course, for the entire season. I think Harden was just a couple of rebounds away from that same feat for the entire season, also in terms of his averages. So their numbers are comparable. Houston's a better team. Some people argued that James Harden had better players, and that's an argument that I'm not sure that's a very strong argument, because James Harden really knows how to make his teammates better. and we saw that in the previous series. So those, I think, are the strongest arguments in favor of James Harden. And again, if Houston is able to really stretch the Spurs in this series, if not beat them, and if Harden is able to outplay Kawhi Leonard to a certain degree, I think he deserves to be the MVP.
All right, there are very interesting matchups tomorrow. We have the Celtics and the Bulls. The Celtics will try to close it out. What do you think about that matchup, Enzo?
Well, I think the Celtics have a very good chance. I think the wind has just, left the sails of the Chicago Bulls. They were up 2-0. They had a golden chance to really wrap up this series at home, but they handed the momentum back to the Celtics, and I think it'll be very foolish for the Celtics to let this one go to a Game 7, even if Game 7 is at home. So I think Boston will ride the momentum. I think they have the depth, they have the motivation and the push to finally eliminate the Chicago Bulls tomorrow.
What about Washington? Do you think they will close it out against Atlanta in Atlanta?
Well, I think that's going to be a trickier series to predict on. No? I'm picking Washington to win the entire series, but the way Atlanta's played, particularly at home, it'll be very, very challenging for the Wizards to do so. I think it will take a big game from John Wall and, a big game from either or both Bradley Beal and maybe Marcin Gortat for them to actually dispose of the Hawks tomorrow. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see this game going to, if we see this series going to a Game 7. Unless, of course, Dwight Howard makes another silly play in the fourth quarter like he did yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that one. Well, we'll all be watching tomorrow. Enzo, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much, Anton. And don't forget, I'm also picking the Clippers.
Yes!
To win tomorrow.
Kahit wala si Blake,
to win tomorrow.
All right. Thank you very much, Enzo. Talk to you again soon.
Hi guys, keep watching The Score for the latest sports updates and don't forget to subscribe to the ABS-CBN Sports in Action YouTube channel.